last race for Carlos Sainz had him finishing in last, which was a DNF, which again is no points. So with that being done and said, and Charles Leclerc again sweeping away to another victory, Charles is ahead in the driver's standing with 71 points, and Carlos, his teammate, is behind in third place with 33 points and 2 podiums. And there's been a lot of discussions going on in regards to what's going on with Carlos Sainz. He's clearly well off his teammates' pace, and I think that's what's causing concern, because last season it appeared Carlos Sainz was much more consistent than Charles, despite Charles actually finishing further ahead in the race 12-7 as of the 2021 season. So when we come into this 2022 season, we expected Carlos Sainz to be right behind Charles Leclerc, but instead Charles is leaving him in the dust each race. I think during testing it looked like they were going to be much closer, but when it comes to actual race time, Charles turns on another gear, and unfortunately his Ferrari teammate Carlos Sainz is left quite behind. Carlos is doing well compared to the other drivers on the grid. Clearly he's doing very well, third in the drivers this year. But again, when you look at now that there's so much spotlight on Charles because he's actually leading the Drivers' Championship, that's also going to put a lot of spotlight on Charles' teammate, who is Carlos Sainz. And if Carlos is well off of his teammate's pace, it's going to start getting people to talk and question Ferrari's long-term situation with Carlos Sainz. I would hate to see Carlos bouncing from McLaren to Ferrari and then to another team in such a short time, especially in Formula One. I would absolutely hate to see that, so I hope that doesn't happen. And it's still so early in the season. I think a lot of people have kind of jumped the gun. He was clearly off. He had a bad weekend I'm sure he is hoping to forget. And I think Carlos will still eventually bounce back. And I could still see him winning a race potentially this year because that Ferrari seems to be the best car clearly on track. So I don't think it's time for us to panic on Carlos Sainz. I would say if this continued till, essentially the summer break, that might be concerning, and even still he could turn it around at that point to at least get himself in a more competitive state. But I think it's very clear this title fight right now is just Charles Leclerc. I mean, obviously Max has had really bad luck this season, so he's going to have to go on a several race winning streak at least and hope for some really bad luck for the Ferraris to catch up. And it's not to say it's impossible. It's not impossible. Anything is. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with Max Verstappen. When you look at the top 5 drivers now, Charles Leclerc with 71 points, George Russell with 37, Carlos Sainz with 33, Sergio Perez with 30, and Lewis Hamilton with 28. Really, Charles is just waiting for the next driver to kind of break through that ceiling of getting closer to him, because right now they're all 30 plus points away from him. So he has breathing room, and until somebody closes that gap, it's hard to say exactly who Charles will really be battling for the title. We know he's battling Max on track for race position most of the time and for the lead and for the race win, but as far as the driver's standings is concerned, there's really nobody close to him. George Russell and Carlos are the closest, and still they both have clearly demonstrated that they're not in a position to get past Charles Leclerc unless some circumstances happen and according to their good luck. So that being said, I think Carlos has just had a bad weekend. Clearly he's not quite on the pace of Charles Leclerc. I never thought Carlos was ever going to be as fast as Charles. As much as I like him, as much as I think a lot of people like Carlos, I don't think any of us really expected him to be as fast as Charles Leclerc throughout a whole season on a consistent basis, to the point where Charles is much further off of Carlos's pace. That clearly is not happening. Despite his consistency last season, Charles has turned up another gear, and Carlos, for whatever reason, he's not quite dialed into this 2022 car and whatever preferences he may have. So hopefully he gets dialed in, because I really want to see Carlos's true pace. I don't think we've truly seen Carlos's true pace compared to Charles, compared to Max. I still think in that Ferrari, Carlos could extract a lot more out of that car, depending on what things are still trying to figure out, and that's what I'm hoping we'll get to see. Otherwise, I don't think there's any need to panic. I think Carlos's future at Ferrari is still secure, at least for another year. I'd be hard pressed to believe that they would kick him out of Ferrari after the season, especially if they win the constructors, which they still are clearly the best team on track to do that as well. I don't see Ferrari dropping Carlos anytime soon, despite what has happened. I think a lot of people have kind of taken this weekend out of context. It was a bad weekend. Yes, it's clear he's behind Charles, but he's still a great teammate, still a very fast driver, still third in the drivers. I think Carlos is fine. Just my thoughts. Feel free to let me know yours in the comment section below. Make sure if you're new, subscribe here to the channel for weekly Formula One discussion content. I appreciate you guys for stopping by today, but unfortunately, it's all the time I have for you. I will see you all later. Goodbye.